Hey everyone, welcome back to SoundSofa, the channel where we do album reviews, small music skits, and more. I'm Aiden and this is Luke, so please join us by liking, subscribing, and popping us a comment if you enjoyed the video or if you have any suggestions. And please hit the bell if you want to stay notified when we upload new videos.
Right, continuing from last episode's indie rock genre, we've got two new albums to review, mine being Black Country New Roads, Ants from Up There, and Aiden's being Beacon by Two Door Cinema Club. Begin with Aiden's, take it away.
So as Luke said, my album that I chose was Beacon by Two Door Cinema Club. So some general facts about the album. Beacon is the second studio album by Northern Irish indie rock band Two Door Cinema Club, released on the 31st of August 2012 by Kitsune. The album was recorded in Los Angeles with the producer Jackknife Lee in his home studio. Beacon received generally positive reviews from music critics, and at Metacritic, the album received an average score of 62 based on 18 reviews. Catherine Rogers of NME stated that the album blitzes in a flurry of discordant M83-style synth fuzz, and while it doesn't stray far from their trademark tinkly guitar lines and infectious choruses, it's laced with the new order-ish disco trimmings. All tracks are written by lead singer Alex Trimble, bassist Kevin Baird, and the guitarist Sam Halliday. Beacon debuted at number 1 on the Irish Albums chart, becoming the band's first number 1 album on the chart. And in the United Kingdom, the album debuted at number 2 on the UK Albums chart, selling 33,306 copies in its first week. So just some background and interesting facts about the album is that the album caused controversy for depicting a near-naked woman hanging from a ceiling. Yeah, as can clearly be seen.
Yeah.
But Two Door Cinema Club admitted to the Daily Star that they were horrified at the offense caused by this artwork and explained that they were actually trying to pay homage to the French photographer Guy Bourdin. Bassist Kevin Baird told Spin magazine that the narrative of the album was about their struggle with the relative amounts of success that they had and being away from their families, and they loved the traveling, but that there were many sacrifices that had to be made in their personal lives. The song Beacon is about a beacon in the distance calling you, said Alex Trimble. It was thought that it resonated through the whole album, which is about growing comfortable with life on the road, learning to get used to how things change, and that they live a great life and how life is amazing, but the grass is always greener on the other side. It's not complaining, he doesn't like moaning, but sometimes he did find it tough. So that was just some background about their perspective of the album. Alex Trimble also said that this album, compared to their first album, lyrically it's more honest than their first album. But he also found that people received it as to be a little bit ambiguous compared to the first record, which was straightforward pop songs. There was still a positive undertone of this album, but it had a lot more depth compared to the first one. So I couldn't find a lot of information about this particular album, but that was just some of the extra tidbits and information.
Interesting.
So I'm very keen to hear
my thoughts and opinions. Okay, getting straight into it. Favorite song? Standalone. Thought it was a great prog song. I loved the way the middle of the song sort of developed from a single hi-hat like drum line. Really enjoyed that. Sort of built layer by layer upon that, going from like elements of like retro synth, like you spoke about, into more like there was almost like orchestral moments on it with violins and almost like choirs at some points. I really fleshed out the track and made that one a firm favorite for me. So Standalone, definitely up there. Second runner-up was the titular track Beacon. Really enjoyed. So I'll get into it in a little bit, but the effect Alex uses on his vocals in the beginning, I found sort of like separated the song from the rest of the tracks just for that reason. And in third place for me is Pyramids. The guitar work on that I found very solid. I quite like the droning of it. So those are my top three. I just thought I'd change it up a little bit because they were very close to each other. I enjoyed them quite a lot. And then my least favorite song was Spring. Wasn't that particularly interesting to me. Nothing really stood out about it. It seemed the most generic, if I can put it that way, of the tracks. But that's not to say it's a bad song. It's just slightly less interesting than the rest of the music on the album. Lyrical score, this album, I'm going to give it a 7. The songwriting on Beacon I found to be relatively basic. Most of the context centered around like love and families, which I didn't really like. It wasn't super meaty for me. I don't know.
Didn't resonate.
Yeah, I found myself more drawn to the instrumental component of this album. Like we spoke about the synths and their staple like rock sound blended with that. Given that, I'll give the musical instrumental score of this album an 8.5 out of 10, bringing my overall to between an 8 and 8.5 on the album altogether. Some general comments. I found that the heavy electronica elements, that classic 80s synth, blended seamlessly with the rock components, which created sort of the staple sound for the album that you can find throughout. I also found that the lyrical component, even though I wasn't a major fan of it, it sort of complemented the instrumentals, and they never really overpowered each other. Like it wasn't too heavy on the instrumentals or too heavy on the lyrics. They found a good balance between the two. I also found that Alex Trimble's voice reminds me a lot of the lead singer of The Keen, Tom Chaplin's voice. They've got sort of a similar vocal style. I also enjoyed how some of the tracks built basically the song from the synth, while others would sort of develop the sound from the bass, or not the bass, the drum line. So that was also a takeaway for me. I also found overall the sound was quite similar to that of some of the Killers' later works. Yeah, something about it sort of like they are in the same like ballpark for me. For the most part, I really enjoyed the album, but at certain points, some of the songs began to sound the same. I think that's mainly due to Alex Trimble's sort of his vocal sound. You know, there's not a lot of range. I'm not saying he's a bad like vocalist. There's not a lot of experimenting.
Yeah, I find like the variation in his tone and his tonality and his sound is not that vast.
Yeah.
It's like pretty similar. It's different, very different to like a lot of other vocalists.
Yeah.
But within his own difference, it's quite the same.
Yeah,
it doesn't change too much. There's no real fluctuation.
Yeah. But other than that, I really enjoyed the album. I thought it was pretty solid. Definitely one I'd put on to sort of boost my mood. It's very uplifting. So if I'm ever in like a bad space or whatever, I can put this on and it'll sort of lift my spirits. Found it giving me a bit of energy to get through the day. So yeah, quite enjoyed it. Will I playlist this album? Yes, most definitely. It is going onto my happier playlists. So you can look forward to that.
Yeah, so with this album, I mean, I agree with what you said. Like, for me, the music is definitely the focus rather than the vocals. The vocals are very nice. They complement the music well, but it's not the main focus. For me, the synth with the guitars, the way that they mesh those two together is so enjoyable, and it's seamless. It's sort of, they literally blend into one another, which is really nice.
So, funny thing happened before we recorded this. I listened to the wrong album by Two Door Cinema Club, False Alarm, which I found myself actually enjoying more than this album. But something I noticed now that you spoke about it is, I feel like this was the album where they experimented with that sound, and 2019's False Alarm was sort of like the full realization of that. It sounds a lot more concise, in my opinion.
Yeah, they've definitely refined the sound.
But they've taken that sound that they were working on in this album, they've elevated it. But that was just something we thought we'd bring up.
Yeah, we thought we'd have to share that. So this album, for me, has a lot of nostalgia, because back in the day when all the illegal downloads of music were in the peak, this was around that time. My cousin from America actually came out for holiday, and she had copied whole random bunch of different albums on a hard drive, and I remember distinctly this album being one of those that was on there because I was just listening through what she had to, I was interested in, and this was one of those albums. So it's such a like nostalgic memory for me of having my cousin from America come out to South Africa, being on holiday, and then listening to this. And it was also during the summer holidays. So this album reminds me a lot of summer. Like anytime I'm taking a nice summer drive, this album instantly comes on. So that's just a personal background thing for this album.
Sick. Oh, that's really cool. Like I said, happy vibes, summer vibes tie into each other, so I can see where you're coming from with that angle. Okay.
Now moving on to Black Country New Road, Ants From Up There, which was suggested by Luke. P.S. I did listen to the deluxe version.
Oh yeah, he went the full mile. I didn't. So, just some general facts about the album off of the net. Ants From Up There is the second studio album by British rock band Black Country New Road. It was released on the 4th of February 2022 on Ninja Tune. Recorded at Shale Abbey on the Isle of Wight. This album was produced by the band's live sound engineer, Sergio Machetsko. I could be butchering that name.
Fair enough.
I stand under correction, but yeah. It was written during the lockdowns when COVID-19 was at its peak, and it was tested during tour in support of their first studio album for the first time, which was released in 2021. So they were workshopping songs from the second album while they were touring the first album. Yeah.
Sorry, just to interrupt.
Yeah.
That's something interesting. I watched an interview with Two Door Cinema Club, and they said the exact same thing. They said this album, it was weird for them because everyone knew their first album, but that was 4 years from when they had done the second album. So everyone knew the first album was like knew all the lyrics, but they were 4 years later. They were actually trying to tour the second album. And so they were presenting the new album, but everyone was like, "Oh, this is different. This is not what we know." And so they said it was a weird space for them because they were like trying to show new music.
But everyone
people
was like gravitating to the old stuff. Okay.
So it's interesting that you say that about them.
Before the release of this album, there were 4 singles that were released leading up to Ants From Up There, being Chaos Space Marine, Red Song, Concord, and Snow Globes, which all appear under the track listing of this album. Okay, so the album received unanimous critical acclaim when it was released, and it peaked at number 3 on the UK top charts, and it reached the top 10 in countries like Australia, Germany, and Holland. Just some interesting facts. My favorite, personally, and the longest track on the album, Basketball Shoes, which also happened to be the final track of Ants From Up There, was actually the first song the group recorded together for this album. And it sort of sets the themes and motifs that the rest of the album would center around, so musically and lyrically. Another fun fact, it was also rumored to be written about a wet dream the former lead singer Isaac Woods had about pop singer Charlie XCX, which you can hear in the...
What?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. But that's speculated. They do know it is about Charlie XCX, but the whole wet dream thing, that's up for debate. Another big thing about this album, 4 days before the release of it, the lead singer and bassist Isaac Woods announced his departure from the band, much to the dismay of many fans, which he actually refers to, or he touches on in songs like Concord. Right, so some fans believe that the Concord that is spoken about throughout the album is representative of an artist's ambition and their drive for success, but much like the plane itself is doomed to be a failure. It's not going to really go anywhere. But the more generally accepted meaning to the Concord is long distance, a relationship that's failing, that you just keep sinking assets into, but nothing really, it doesn't become anything. It's a failure in the end.
Sure.
Yeah, it was also a bit of a send-off for Isaac Woods. This is the whole album is sort of a swan song for him before he left, which it adds a lot of emotional depth to the album for me.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Right, those are our interesting facts. Now we will hear Aiden's thoughts and opinions of the album, and take it away, Aiden.
Cool. So this is gonna be a hot take.
Ooh, Aiden.
So get ready, buckle in.
Strapped in, bro.
Okay, so my favorite song to at least start the positive news is Concord. I really enjoyed it. I might have to put it tied with Hold On.
Hold On is great.
Really enjoyed both of them. Another song that I really enjoyed was the Bread song.
Okay.
Lyrically, it strangely enough really resonated with me. The lyrics where he's talking about how she says, "Oh, don't eat your toast in my bed," and "I never felt the crumbs until you said, this place is not for any man, nor particles of bread." Just something about the way that he sings those lyrics really show a lot of emotion. Yeah, it's really it peaked for me. The emotion peaked in this album there. Yeah, definitely. So that was just another thing I wanted to say. Okay, I also enjoyed Snow Globes because there's a song that I really enjoy by Manchester Orchestra. It's called Sleeper 1972. It's this slow, very emotive song, and Snow Globes reminded me a lot of that song. In the pace, the tonality, even the way that he sang the lyrics. It's quite an emotional song, and I really enjoyed it. So those are all about the favorites of mine.
I think Snow Globes is very underrated. I find in discussions about the album, people gravitate more towards the place where he inserted the blade and Chaos Space Marine. Basketball Shoes is also fairly popular. But Snow Globes, very underrated. I'm kind of proud of you for having it up there.
Thanks. So my least favorite song would have to be Good Will Hunting.
Okay,
Mainly because personally, I really don't like when artists have pop culture references, and having the Billie Eilish line irritates me every single time I hear it.
It's kind of like it doesn't fit with the rest.
The rest of the album. It's just like this random pop culture reference.
Yeah, because the Concorde is this. It's an old plane, right?
Yeah.
And then they bring in elements of today's pop culture, and
it didn't fit. It just felt weird, and I genuinely don't like pop culture references. They can sometimes work, but generally I find them a bit tacky, and that kind of was the feeling with that song. It's not a bad song. I enjoy the music, and especially his vocals in that song. It's really not bad, but just something about that.
Show you Star by Brockhampton after that.
Okay.
You'll hate it.
So excited for that. And then in terms of the least favorite, musically, hot take here, Chaos Space Marine. I think just for me, it's a little bit too avant-garde, and it's got kind of like a circus, theatre, steampunk-esque vibe, which can work. I know a lot of people enjoy it, but for me, it's like very on the edge. It's a little bit past what I typically enjoy. So it's not that I don't appreciate it. The music is very impressive, but it's not personally what I enjoy. So that's my hot take on that.
As long as it's not Basketball Shoes, I would have leapt across this table.
You mean the 11 minutes?
The 12 minute
song.
It's a 3-part epic.
It's a 3-part. It's fun. It is impressive.
I'm sorry, just the progression of the song is unspeakably. Sorry, I won't accept basketball slander. I know you're entitled to your opinion.
No, fair. I'll take that. I agree. I do agree. It's impressive. So my lyrical score for the album would be at 7.2. I think he wrote some of the work very well, especially the Bread song. That song really resonated with me, but I can't give it the Billie Eilish. It just dropped it too much. It was too much for me.
Damn it, Isaac.
Musical score, I would give it a 7.5. Not because of the technicality and how impressive it is, just because of how I enjoy it. So in terms of technical artistry and skill, I would have to give it a 9.
Yeah.
Maybe even
yeah.
higher. It's really impressive stuff. But in terms of enjoyment that I get out of listening to it, I would have to drop it down to about a 7.5, maybe 7.8.
I get it. It's like, for me, Polyphia recently, I'm going completely off tangent here, but like it's incredibly technical, but it doesn't, sound good necessarily. It's like, wow,
It's impressive, yeah.
that's crazy. It doesn't, I wouldn't listen to that.
But would you pop it on Spotify?
100%, I get what you're saying, don't worry.
So then that gives me an overall score for the album, again, of enjoyment, about a 7.3. So that's my personal.
Fair.
So I have some general comments that I want to just point out. So the first listen through, I'll be honest, was really challenging for me.
No, don't worry.
I slogged through that first listen. I was like literally listening a song and then maybe giving it a few hours and then another song. It was a challenge to get through.
I get it. It's an acquired taste, sort of.
It's quite different. Like I've listened to quite a vast array of genres, but it's different to what I've typically.
I think for me it was easier to get into because it's very reminiscent to me of the way Dave Matthews would structure one of his songs. It's very like long, drawn out. So I completely understand that argument.
So one thing I also wanted to say is there's a lot of, which was really interesting, a lot of wood instruments in the album, and a lot of different instruments. I heard violin, piano, possibly harpsichord even. It was a lot of different instruments, which is really nice. It's cool that they're incorporating these instruments into I don't want to say mainstream because it's not mainstream, but into
it's mainstream underground.
Yeah, mainstream underground. But what typically is targeted for people to generally listen to, which I thought was really nice. But again, for me, it's a bit tough on the ears.
So you're saying if they threw an 808 in there, you would have done it?
If they dropped the bass, I would definitely. It'd be easier to follow.
Yeah.
But I think it's just there's a lot going on musically, and again, it's so impressive. Especially there's one song, I'm not 100% sure now, where the saxophone and the piano is like they're doing this interesting rhythm with each other and they're staying on beat, and it's really impressive. But listening to it, it's a lot. I have to focus to listen to it, which I don't typically enjoy, having to actively put energy into listening to something. I like passively hearing music.
Oh, if someone doesn't like to engage with music, someone doesn't like to be swept up in their music.
I did say this is a personal issue of mine. Personal issue.
It's cool.
So, but however, through successive repeats of the album, I definitely started to enjoy it more and more, and began to sort of pick up the flow of the album, which it began to be a lot more enjoyable, and I could see the narrative that was being told through the album. And I also have to just shout out the saxophone solo on Mark's theme. It's really good. It's really, really good.
These amazing musicians are insanely talented.
Yeah, it's clear.
Yeah,
very clear.
They know what they're doing, which is possibly to their own detriment, like you said. It's like,
but again, that's just a personal thing.
Yeah.
It's if that's what they enjoy making, and if there's people like you enjoy listening to it, don't take what I have to say about it to a detriment. Yeah, like go for it. It's just my personal perspective. Exactly.
Yeah.
Interesting thing is the vocals through the album. I don't know if it's because he's from the UK that makes me think of this, but the lead singer Neil Pennycook from the Scottish band that I personally absolutely love, one of my favourite UK bands, is Merceau.
That is nothing I've ever heard of before. So
fair enough.
Cool.
Fair enough.
Flex on
but
me
the vocals of Black Country New Road, very reminiscent to me of Merceau, Neil Pennycook's vocals, and I love his vocals. They experimental, but still, it's for me. Neil Pennycook's on the edge of the experimental versus enjoyable, which I actually found the vocals to be the same in Ants From Up There. The vocals weren't too experimental. There was a little bit of there were certain parts where it was a little bit leaning to like, okay, this is a lot. But in general, I really enjoyed the vocal performance of this album. So now to the ultimate question.
Oh, will you playlist
Will
it?
I playlist this? I probably would not.
Okay, fair.
Only because, like I said, I enjoy music that is
Palatable.
easy to listen to, which is possibly not a bad thing if I do playlist it, because it challenges me
Yeah.
to put myself out there. And
I
stuff.
get it.
But in terms of enjoyment, it's not necessarily what I would go for. However, there are definitely individual songs that stand out that I absolutely would put on a playlist, and I have very specific playlists for those songs. So it's not like a complete like washout, but
Whoa. Okay. No. I was just gonna say I know what you mean, because I've tried it. Like I've played basketball shoes. I've tried playing basketball shoes in the car a couple times, and every time I started it, everyone complains. It's like, oh, it's the 13-minute song that we're gonna have to sit through. And I say yes, it's good, but it's 13 minutes long. It's a bit of a you have to sit through.
That being said, I respect that. Like, I have no problem listening to a long progressive song. One of my favorite artists is Tool, and
Of course, yes, yeah.
minimum 7 minutes long per song. So I have no problem with long songs. So yeah, that's what I thought.
All right, so now it's time for a little bit of my input on the album. I first stumbled upon this, I think, end of 2020. No. End of 2022, I got into this album after it had been released. I'd heard it talked about in circles online, wasn't too familiar with the group. Started listening to the album, like Aiden said, couldn't really get into it. So I started listening to some songs from for the first time. Really got addicted to Sunglasses. And that sort of acted as the bridge for me to get into Answer Up There, because I got used to the sound, sort of the dynamics of the instrumentals and the vocals, and yeah, ever since then it's been in steady rotation for me. It did take a while for me to get this, so I completely understand your argument. But Basketball Shoes is probably one of my top 10 songs of all time.
Sure.
It's just very emotive for me. It like sort of, it gets you sort of swept up in a story, and then for me, the almost like the breaking point is, I'd say, sort of the end of the second act, start of the third act of the song, where there's just this like cacophony of screaming and guitars, and it sort of envelops the whole album for me.
I think that's exactly why I said it gives me a theatrical sort of feel, because it's literally like it's staging different scenes, and it's like performance rather than just listening, which is why I found it you had to actively engage with listening to it.
I think that's kind of why music critics enjoy it so much, is because that's their bread and butter. That's what they want to look for. They want to get really involved in the music and dig for words.
No, that's fair.
So like I said, that segment for me was sort of, it encapsulated the album, and then the last act was a send-off for Isaac Woods, especially with in the lines, "Your generous loan to me, your crippling interest." It could sort of be speaking about how the pressure of fans and their expectations played too much of a toll on him, because they invested so much into this group, and the pressure was getting to him. So I don't know, I think that's also sort of accepted by a lot of fans as a bit of a send-off.
Interesting.
So that's my little bit of personal feedback.
Well, hearing you say that, I think what I will definitely do is give it more time, because it has only been
it's like
a week or so that I've been listening, and already like today, giving it a proper listen through, I enjoyed it a lot more than when I first started. So I think if I give it more time, and like you said, giving it context with other songs from other albums, it might also add to the overall enjoyment of it. So
if you
definitely
out there would like to listen to it, I recommend listening to for the first time first, specifically tracks like Athens, France and Sunglasses. Those are two great songs to sort of get you into it. Also a bit long-winded, but definitely an easier step into Black Country New Roads. So that's it for this episode. We hope you enjoyed hearing us go on about our opinions and thoughts on these two albums. Stick around. We will have new videos out soon, possibly working on some skits, possibly doing this and that and the other thing,
And all of that.
But yeah, leave us a comment letting us know what you thought. Did you agree with our opinions? Did you disagree? What were your experiences with these albums? If you've had any, come back to us when you have listened to them and tell us what you thought. And yeah, we'd love to see you soon again. Thank you for your time, and goodbye.
Just garbage, but fun to make. Yeah.